Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, please. Thank you so much. You know, I've gotten used to the fact that you all give me nice, loud round of applauses, much like my middle school students did to me every single morning. So thank you for provoking that memory. And thank you, Randy Weingarten, for that amazing introduction. And oh my gosh, isn't it great to be in the greatest freaking city in the entire world, the city of Chicago? I have to tell you though, being here today, you know, reminds me of why we do this work. And quite frankly, this is home. To be in a room full of individuals who love people, who are willing to invest your time in organizing, to make sure that we do everything in our power to bring people up out of poverty and to ensure that those of us who are part of the working class have a real shot at the dream that our ancestors could only imagine. Now, I have to be honest with you all. I know some of you are not used to seeing me in a suit. Now, I've always been this cute, though. Make no mistake about it. Just didn't always have to dress up as much. Not used to having armed guards surround me and take me from place to place. And quite frankly, I'm not sure if I'll ever get used to that. Because one of the most important decisions I've ever made in my life was becoming a Chicago public school teacher, teaching 7th and 8th graders. And it taught me an awful lot about what's possible when we actually spend time helping young people see and know their value. But unfortunately, for too many families across this country, and especially in major cities and in rural communities, value and purpose is not always found and discovered. In fact, I can tell you firsthand, of having worked and served as a school teacher, that too many of our young people have been left in economic despair because of policies that have, unfortunately, favored the very few and the rich and the powerful. But aren't you glad that you are part of a movement that recognizes that working people, black, brown, white, this multicultural, intergenerational movement that has propelled a middle school teacher to the 5th floor, that we are not going to succumb to the interests of those who have had power for too long in this country. Now, I should just say, though, before I get too far off in my presentation, for those of you who are new to the city of Chicago or visiting, this is not Naperville. Now, clearly, those of you who are laughing are clearly admitting that you watch Fox and Friends, so that's a whole nother implication. But for those of you who are not familiar with that, the day that I was elected, Fox News said that when Brandon Johnson gets elected, the entire world is going to collapse. They said that the streets would be overtaken by violence. Many folks, even one particular politician said, do not accept the results. There are real forces that do not want to see the movement that we have built come to fruition. Now, make no mistake about it, it's not as if I did not know that there were forces that oppose our values, but to know that there are forces that are working hard every single day to share or to promote a narrative about the city of Chicago that is wrong. In fact, those forces want to define and characterize the city of Chicago as this violent, unstable city. The way they characterize this city, these forces that are working hard to disrupt our movement, they want you to believe that you cannot walk freely in this city and experience the wealth and the vitality and the vibrancy of the city of Chicago. Now, let me be very clear. We have our challenges in the city of Chicago, like many American cities do. But I'm also reminded of one of the most incredible leaders of our time, the great Karen Lewis. Who said that this fight for education was about a fight for the soul of public education. Because she knew, in the words of W.E.B. Du Bois, that public education at the expense of the state, after all, is and always will be a Negro idea. And that liberation through the lens of those who were descendants of slaves, there's no greater testament to what's possible when you have individuals who are part of a movement that believe that public accommodations have to be guaranteed rights. And whether it's education, transportation, housing, jobs, healthcare, that the soul of Chicago was on full display because it's here in this city where Chairman Fred recognized that every child should have something to eat before they go to school. That's the soul of Chicago. It's also the place where a reverend said, hope is alive, that ran on single payer, much like Chairman Fred said that health care is a human right. And in 1984 and 1988, Reverend Jesse Jackson changed the rules that led to President Barack Obama getting elected. Reverend Jesse Jackson is the soul of Chicago. The soul of Chicago sent a black Haitian man named Jean-Baptiste Point de Sable to establish a new city at the mouth of the river. They understood that the soul of Chicago is through the lens of real, true liberation. I'm reminded of individuals like Marion Stamps, who is the mother and grandmother of a movement for housing justice. And the system that fought against her, her daughter is now the Cook County Commissioner, the seat that I ran and won on. That's the soul of Chicago. The soul of Chicago also reflects that the son of Rudy Lozano Sr., who helped build a black and brown coalition and was taken away from us, now his son sits at the very table that he fought and died, and people killed those leaders to prevent us from being at those tables. But now Rudy Lozano Jr. sits at the table of power when it comes to public education. That is the soul of Chicago. Now, I'll be remiss with me doing the city of Chicago a service if I didn't talk about the fact that we have the best cuisine in the entire world. And so whether you go to Pilsen, whether you go to the west or south sides of Chicago, whether you want tacos or catfish, whatever you want, I need you to spend as much money as possible these next few days, because the soul of Chicago's got to be funded. Now, you will also see the vibrancy of our city through our arts and culture, our sports arenas, that it imbibes the true nature of what the soul of Chicago is all about. But we also have to recognize that in every major city, particularly after the pandemic, saw an increase, and during the pandemic, saw an increase in crime. Now, many people will make you believe that the only way in which you can have safe communities is by simply engaging in the politics of old, the failed strategies of believing that the only answer to public safety is policing. That's a failed strategy, that we spend more money on police per capita anywhere else in the world, and has it worked? It has not. And quite frankly, you know, the individuals on Fox and Friends, and I don't want y'all to misunderstand me, I don't just sit around and watch Fox and Friends all day. I just think that it's important that we note that the narrative that they want to push in the city of Chicago, if they're successful, that's the narrative that they want to push all over the country. And we're not going to stand for it in the city of Chicago, and we're not going to stand for it anywhere in this country. That in order to have a better, stronger, safer Chicago, we have to do what works, and that's invest in people. The real economic security, the public safety plan, has to be about investing in people. And that's why I'm grateful that the movement that led me to the 5th floor, is a movement that is radical because it actually demonstrates the greatest radical act, and that's the act of love. And so our campaign was very clear. It's all about real, true public investments, that we have to move it past the stale and racist talking points of the past, and we have to decide to actually do what is best for the people of Chicago and for this country, and that's to invest in them. No one should be too poor to live in one of the richest cities, Chicago, in one of the richest countries, America, at the richest time in the history of the world. There is literally more than enough for everybody. Everybody. No one should lose at the expense of someone else winning. Now, the soul of Chicago is on full display tonight because you see it and you can feel it in the air, this multicultural, intergenerational movement that has propelled us into this moment where we don't have to shrink and we don't have to hide from our values. We can actually run on our principles and values and win. Now, as I close here, and I mean that in a real way because you all know that I'm a son of a pastor. He was a carpenter. Y'all know this, right? He was a carpenter and a pastor. I had a lot of pressure growing up in a house when your father is just like Jesus. That brother worked hard. Raised in a household with 9 siblings and also foster siblings in a house with 1 bathroom. I learned how to negotiate really early in life. Form allies with women. In order for us to transform our economy, we have to be bold and audacious. As President Biden has articulated, he said that a teacher and a firefighter should not pay the same tax rate as a billionaire and a millionaire. Now, you all should feel good about that because clearly President Biden read my budget plan. Because there are forces that see our values and our view of the world, and they'll tell us, that sounds good, but how are you going to pay for it? Well, if you still don't know, let me make sure you know. In order to make sure that education is a human right, healthcare, affordable housing, climate justice, transportation system, a green technology industry that actually provides real economic opportunities to deal with the climate change that we are experiencing, the wealthy in this country have to step up, put some skin in the game, and pay their fair share. And I'm grateful that we have industry in the city of Chicago, like our restaurant industry, one of the largest, if not the largest employers of young people in this city. And yet, because of the sub-minimum wage, many of our young people are working full-time and still find themselves living in poverty. We have too many people who are working hard every single day and cannot afford to live in the very city in which they work in. And this is not just a Chicago challenge. This is a challenge for the country. We get to be bold and audacious in this moment. If 100 years ago could lead to the plight that we are experiencing right now with the labor rights movement and the civil rights movement, as Dr. King said, if it were to ever collide, what enormous potential we would have. That potential is alive and well today. And so tonight I'm going to be working with our servers tonight. And I know that there's been a great deal of work to make sure that there's one fair wage for the people who do the work. And so, as I said before, I want you all to enjoy yourselves in the city of Chicago. And I want you to lean on one another. That the best thing that we can do collectively is to organize, one, neighborhood, one block at a time. And as we continue to build the organizing power that is in this room today, that we can set a new course for generations to come, that black, brown, white, young, old, rich, I got two rich friends now, poor, no matter who you are, you get to have a better, stronger, safer Chicago. We get to transform this country with the very people in this room. And for those who wish to divide us at this time, we're not going to allow them to do it. We're going to look each other in the eyes and we're going to live out the full manifestation of those who only can dream of this moment. We will not cower. We will not flinch in this moment, but we will swing back with the full authority of the ancestors that made this moment possible. God bless you all, Netroots. Let's build a better, stronger, safer Chicago. Let's build a better, stronger, safer America. Thank you all. Thank you all so much.